Morning, everyone. Back to Tanya class, chapter 30. So, we discussed last week, first of all, that this chapter was inserted by the Alter Rebbe at a later point after he already finished the first round writing the Tanya. He felt the importance of adding this chapter, and the theme of the chapter is how not to judge others and why others should make you feel humble. He quoted the Mishnah that a person should always be humble in the face of another person because you never understand what what circumstances that person had to go through that brought them to that level, even though you think that you're on a higher level, or maybe you are on a higher level spiritually, but don't judge them because you never know how you would behave if you would have been in the same position. I heard a story that the Alter Rebbe once was coming out of a study, and he asked his Hasidim to get together, and he was giving out l'chaim, he was giving out some liquor, some cake, and he was in a very celebrative mood when he gave the l'chaim. I asked him what's the matter. He said that he had met a Jew who has been has violated a lot of the tenets of Torah, and when he sat with him, he had a very hard time figuring out how he can exercise this rule of being humble in front of such a man. Here you have a man who violated many commandments of the Torah, and yet the Torah demands that I have to be humble. And for 5 minutes, I was meditating about myself, and I found nine deficiencies within me that I am that puts me on a lower level than this man. Nine deficiencies that this other man doesn't have, but I have within me. So I was worried that I'm going to not be able to interact with such a person because I will feel superior. Like the Alter Rebbe can do that, and the Alter Rebbe being a spiritual giant, scholar, and a tzaddik, real tzaddik, yet he was able to find something that in his eyes looked that he can use, how to view the other person, how much more so we ought to behave this way. Well, interesting, those who were on Shabbos and Shul, he's not here today in class, Yuri and Berta. Yuri became a grandfather on Shabbos. His son had a baby, and we had a nice kiddush in the.
Huh? We can't hear you.
Yeah, the sound is a little bit off.
Okay, is it all of a sudden or the whole time?
All the whole time.
Huh?
I sent you a chat.
Now it's better, I think.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I sent you a chat.
Okay, how is it now?
Yeah, now it's good.
Okay, so I'll speak up.
Or just it was an echo, like you're on speakerphone.
Okay, now it's better?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, Luda. Good morning, Mitzvah.
Morning.
And good morning, Alex. So, I was just about to say that on Shabbos morning, Yuri announced that he just became a grandfather.
Mm.
I want to wish him and Berta a Mazel Tov. And as Yuri is a very special Jew. Yuri actually became more religious, actually in communist Russia, which is very unusual and was highly dangerous. Yuri, at the age of 33, I believe, decided to have a circumcision in Moscow in the 80s in hiding. So we have a tzaddik amongst us. There's no question about it. But Yuri, he doesn't share much. I always have to kind of extract stories out of him. So whenever there's a good occasion, is in a good mood, I try to make extra l'chaim. I ask him for a good story. Shared on Shabbos that you've heard me saying many times stories of the great Chassid Rabbi Mendel Futerfas, who was one of the great Chassidim of this generation. He endured, I believe, 14 years torture in the Gulag in Siberia for being a Jew and being a Chabad Chassid, for teaching Yiddishkeit and teaching people Torah, children Torah. He went and he suffered for 14 years. And when he came out, he was living in England at the time, and he lived in Israel. He's the first cousin to my grandmother, my wife's grandmother. And many stories, amazing stories. And he passed in 1995. So our Yuri tells me that it tells us in the show that he had some type of inner conflict he was trying to find himself. So he decided in the early 90s to go to Israel to study the yeshiva, not a Chabad yeshiva, to study the yeshiva. And when he was in Jerusalem, he was asking around, who can help me? Who can help me find myself in my journey? And he was told he should go to the village called Kfar Chabad, and he should meet Rabbi Mendel Futerfas. So by the way, just a side note, I'm talking about Rabbi Futerfas for 12 years. Since I know Yuri, he hasn't told me once that he actually met him. So he takes the bus, goes down to Tel Aviv. Next to Tel Aviv is where Rabbi Mendel Futerfas lived. And he told him about his personal struggles. And he asked him for direction. And Mendel told him two stories. One story, Yuri says, I said, one of my favorite stories. I said many times in the name of Mendel. And the other story I never heard of. So the first story is the story of a tightrope walker. Mendel, when he was in the Gulag, he watched these, they were bored, in the camps, and there were a lot of non-Jews, and there were intellectuals, and there were also people who had a lot of talents and skills. Stalin threw them out because he was afraid of them. He was afraid of the intellectuals and people who had talent, that they're going to overthrow him. So he sent them. So he's sitting there with one person. He put up a rope, and he would walk over the rope back and forth. And the Mendel, who was never went to a show, was amazed how a person can walk over the rope. He asked him, "How do you do it?" So the tightrope told him, "You always have." You guys can hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay, Bella, you hear me? He said, "Always have to focus on the end of the rope, the goal. Fix your eyes on the goal. The moment you take off your eyes, you lose your balance." And he said, what's the most difficult moment? The moment he has to turn around, because for a split moment, he loses the focus on that target. So Mendel said, what a lesson in life. Mendel always wanted to explain, he learned so many lessons when he was in Siberia. A lesson in life that we need to always be focused on the goal. If we get distracted, you fall off. The world is like one tightrope, and the world is trying to distract you. We need to be focused on our mission. We need to be focused on what we have to do, what Hashem wants us to do. And as long as you're focused and fixed, you can survive. You don't fall off. That's story number one. Story number two, which I want to connect to today's Tanya, was the story that there was a shikar. What's a shikar? A drunk man, drunk Russian, and he would travel and drink. And as he drinks a lot, he will collapse. And once he collapsed into the blata, into the dirt road, but not knowingly, it was also a pile of horse manure. And it got stuck in his face. And he gets up and he continues to travel. He comes to the next town and he says, smells horrible here. And he goes to the next town and says, smells horrible. What's wrong with these people? Why is everyone smelling so bad? Until somebody said, sir, it's in your mustache. so many
Good
times. This
story.
is really, that's a good story, right?
Good story.
Good story. Too bad Yuri's not here today, but I'm sure he can give us a little bit more details to the story. But the point of the story is a good story, and it goes together with what Tanya says here. How can I be humble in the eye of somebody else? Stop looking and pointing finger at the others. Rather, look at yourself. Try to put yourself in that person's shoe. If you would have been in that position, how would you behave? Would you have the strength to overcome that or not? Hence, you can be humble in their face. Let's continue with the reading here. I want to read. We are belief in section 3. I want to start again in on page 344. And in the beginning last week we read about how the Alter Rebbe is challenging a person to examine himself. Stop move away from pointing fingers, but examine yourself and ask yourself, how are you doing in the fight of the impulse to evil? Everybody, and we discussed at length also, even if you think you got it all, you're good, you have it all set, you're in control of your evil, you are praying, you're doing mitzvahs, but if you are status quo, meaning if you are just doing the same thing day in and day out, you're not doing enough. You got to always, when it comes to spiritual pursuit, you got to always there always has to be effort. It's very important, a very important factor. We learned this in last week's parsha, when Sarah passes away and Abraham looks for a plot. He gets an offer for a free plot at the city of Hebron, and he says, "I don't want it for free. I want to pay for it." He insists to pay for it. And also see King David when he wants to build the temple in Jerusalem. They offer him the temple mount for free, and he says, "No, no, no. I want to pay for it. If I don't pay for it, I'm not going to take it." Where the lesson is that Avram teaches us, in life you always have to put in effort. If there is no effort, something is not correct. If there's not effort, that means you have not done enough. If there's not effort, that means there is something deeper that you need to get. So if our service with Hashem comes too easy, right, and we are excited because now I got it, I'm used to it, have to challenge to do more, because obviously, we said last week, it shows that you are not putting enough effort because you got to elevate in your pursuit to Hashem, and B, if you become too complacent and too comfortable, your evil inclination will come knocking you down from behind. So let's read over here, 344, in the extent of the struggle that determines whether or not you are actively fighting your impulse to evil. Any person who has not adopted this approach of fighting this difficult war against the body could not yet be described as fighting his impulse to evil, which blazes like a flaming fire. He has not caused his impulse to evil to be subdued and broken through its reputation of God. Person might observe all the mitzvahs meticulously and pray in the synagogue 3 times a day, and yet he has not even begun to fight his impulse to evil. The test of this, what is the test? Is he struggling greatly? Similarly, with concentration during other acts of devotional worship, such as biblical requirements of grace after meals, as well as the rabbinically required blessing both over pleasurable experience before mitzvahs, and it goes without saying, having authentic intentions when performing the mitzvahs, there must be an ongoing struggle with the impulse to evil for more intense devotion, less distraction. And similarly, with commitment to Torah study, you should study much more than you want or desire by nature or by nurture through an intense struggle with your body. Because to study a little bit more than your natural inclination requires just a minor battle, which can't be compared in a way to really fighting your impulse to evil, which blazes like fire. For if you don't champion over your impulse to evil, subduing it and breaking it before God, you're classified as a complete Russia. So all these thoughts should help you to be humble of spirit before everyone, not to judge another person until you have shared the circumstances, and not to judge another person until you have shared the circumstances. Before you judge, ask yourself, am I really so holy myself? Have I even begun to find my impulse to evil? I just want to emphasize again, and this is so important, and this is such a fundamental teachings in Judaism, in Torah, that the question is, if you want to know, if you want to take the test, how am I doing in my spiritual pursuit? How am I doing in my observance of Hashem? What's the question? Am I struggling or not? If I say I don't struggle, something is not good. You didn't do enough. That's the question. And by the way, that's not, don't get confused. That's not struggle. That's not physical struggle. That's not, God forbid, God doesn't want us to have to struggle physically in mundane matters, right? You don't want to struggle for making a living or struggle your health. God forbid, that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about how is your prayer? How is your mitzvahs? If it comes too easy, you got to do more. You got to do more. It has to be struggle. And that's so important in study of Torah. Study of Torah has to be a struggle. People sometimes say it's so difficult. It's hard. I struggle with it. Well, welcome to the club. That's where you belong. Jump into it right there. Jump into it. Grab it. That's the opportunity. And we all know that without struggle, nothing really sticks. So especially in study of Torah. So and same thing goes with observance of mitzvahs. So he gave you right here 3-4 examples. It's something that on the practical level we can all implement. So for example, he said there's a biblical command, I always have to make a blessing after I eat. Right? The teacher was telling the kids in school, Cheder, that you have to make a blessing after you eat, and you have to make a blessing before you eat. And the kid said, I don't have to do it. My mother's a good cook. I trust her. So what's the blessing? So I make a blessing on the water. So every time you drink, make a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niya b'dvarim. Okay, now you say, oh, Rabbi, you can say that by heart because you grew up this way, right? Okay. For me, it's not a struggle. For me, it's so common to say it that I don't even think of the words, what I'm saying. So I drink water all day long, right? So not every time you take a sip of water. Every time I drink, for the next 60 minutes, I don't have to make another blessing. If I take a break and then in another hour, then I make another blessing next time I drink around. So without counting, probably a person who keeps to, who's observant, so to speak, makes probably 100, 200 blessings a day. Why? Do you know how many blessings we make in the prayers every morning? We open up with blessings, with like 12 blessings. Then there's the Amidas, 19 blessings. Then there is, then when before you even start your day, you wake up in the morning, you wash your hands, you make a blessing on the tail of your dime. You go to the bathroom. Every time you go to the bathroom, there's a blessing. Do you know about the blessing? After you go to the bathroom, you make a blessing. It's a beautiful blessing. It's a 4 or 5 line blessing. Then when you eat, before you eat, make a blessing. After you eat, make a blessing. You walk outside and it's thundering and lightning, not a blessing. You see the rainbow, not a blessing. All day long, we are busy making blessings. It's beautiful. But if you're making so many blessings, do I really think about the words I'm saying? That's a struggle. So for me personally, it's a struggle to actually think what I'm saying. Right? Boom. Say it, but I actually meditate on the words, what they mean every time I drink water. So that's my struggle. What is your struggle? What's your struggle? Open mic today. We're sharing our struggles. Ask yourself, what's my struggle? My struggle, and it could be your struggle, is to even make a blessing before you eat. What is the blessing? Which food? There's different blessings with different food. So let me explore that. Let me implement that. Let me work on that. Let me make me a little, let me have a little index card that I can practice the blessing. Do I make a blessing after I eat? Do I make a blessing after I go to the bathroom? So those are just a little strong. When I pray, do I actually pray and think what I'm saying? So that is just the kind of thing that Alter Rebbe is talking about. So if for me it's a struggle, I make 100 blessings a day, right? Oh, this guy down the road I meet now, he doesn't even know what a blessing is. He doesn't even know. He doesn't even kosher. He doesn't keep Shabbos. I'm better than him. No, you have struggles. Are you struggling in your observance? Are you doing enough? Are you putting enough effort? If you start thinking about it, it deflates you, and you can always think to be humble in front of everybody else. Just to finish up, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was the greatest humble man that ever worked on the earth. The Torah gives him that quality. Moshe Haya'anov, he was a humble man. And the Rebbe asked, how can he be humble in front of everybody? If he was the great prophet who spoke face to face with Hashem, how can he be so humble? So Moshe, when he looked at another person, listen to this. This is a real good lesson. He would always say to himself, "It is true. I am the prophet. I am the great Moses. However, all my qualities is actually a gift that Hashem has given me." And I ask myself, if Hashem would have given the same gifts and talent and skills to the person I'm talking to, yeah, they know less than I do. I'm the great prophet, he's not. But if Hashem would have made him the prophet, if Hashem would have given him all the same qualities, perhaps he would have utilized it a lot greater than I am. So who am I to be to feel superior of that person? Okay, we'll continue here, 345, section 3. The irreligious person. And is there really any difference between turning away from evil and doing good? There's always two paths we have to always observe. Two paths. Turning away from evil and doing good. Constantly, right? We are in those two tracks. You can't be on one track. You can't just say, I'm gonna do mitzvot, right? I'm gonna keep Shabbos. I'm going to study Torah, but I'll speak gossip. I'll eat treif. You can't. It's always going to be the two tracks: the positive, to do the good, and to refrain from the negative. Like in a relationship, you can't tell your wife, "Yeah, I love you," right? But I also love somebody else. It doesn't work. If you're in a relationship, there has to be a positive and it has to refrain from the negative. So similar in the service of Shem, it has to be do the positive and refrain from the negative. So look over here. And is there really any difference between turning away from evil and doing good? They're all mitzvahs of the Holy King, the single and unique one, blessed be He. The religious, irreverent person fails in the area of turning away from evil. He violates the Torah prohibitions, whereas the ostensibly religious person, if he fails to seriously fight his impulse to evil during prayer and worship, fails in the area of doing good. So who is worse? We cannot say one is better than the other, since both are seriously failing. So too, with the other commandments, there needs to be an active struggle with the impulse to evil, especially in financial matters involving money, such as worship through tzedakah. So even in the area of turning away from evil, avoiding transgression, in which superficially the religious person seems to succeed. Okay, you use the word superficially. Any intelligent person can find areas in his life where he does not turn away from evil completely in everything, through everything, and with everything. Every instance where an intense struggle is called for in the measure described above, even a struggle less than what is described above, such as stopping in the middle of an enjoyable but pointless discussion, or to cease telling a negative story about someone, even if the negative content is slight and minuscule, and even though the negative content is true, and even when the purpose is not to speak negativity about the other person, but merely to demonstrate your own innocence. As we know from what Rabbi Shimon said to his father, a holy Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, to demonstrate his innocence. Rabbi Shimon says, I do not write this problematic divorce document. Rather, Yehuda the tailor wrote it, and his father replied, keep away from Lashon Hara or slander. Look there in Talmud Babasa, beginning chapter 10. And there's so many common examples of things like this, which you probably do all the time. So basically, he's telling us that within your pious behavior, there can be many levels that you need to work on. So for some people, that's that oh, I am a very religious Jew. I do all the mitzvot, but how do you behave when it comes to minute or seemingly minute transgressions like slander, like talking bad about somebody else, even if you have to demonstrate your innocence, as we see in those stories, how the sages were very careful. And there are so many common examples of the things like this, which you probably do all the time. Especially, you should feel humbled about your shortcoming in the area of sanctifying yourself through that which is permissible to you, which is in fact a biblical requirement based on the verse. You should be holy because I, God, you God, I'm holy. And you should sanctify yourself and be holy, for I am God, your God. And you can also find areas of rabbinic laws in which you have been lax. And the words of the scribe are even more stringent than the words of the Torah. Yet all these things and others are the sins which a person tramples under his feet and fails to take seriously. And these are sins, and these sins are now regarded as permissible since they have been violated repeatedly, etc. But in truth, if you learned in Jewish text and you hold fast to God's Torah and you desire to be close to God, that even these minor sins shall make you feel that your sin is too great to bear, and your culpability is far greater, doubled and redoubled, in that you fail to battle and overcome your impulse to evil at the level of intense struggle mentioned above. In this sense, your culpability is more than that of the most religious, irreverent person who sits at street corners and is far from God and His Torah. Because with those distant from God, their culpability is not so great. In their failure to overcome the impulse to evil, which blazes like a flaming fire, as a result of trepidation of God, who watches over and discerns all of their deeds. Their culpability does not approach that of someone who comes near to God, to His Torah and to His service, because from the religious person, more is expected. As the rabbis of blessed memory taught about Acher, one of the greatest Talmudic sages, who later deviated from traditional Judaism, that his culpability was greater because he has known my glory. He has been close to God, and therefore he should have known better. And that is why a sages of blessed memory taught in reference to those uneducated in Judaism that since they are unaware of the severity of the action, their deliberate sins are considered as inadvertent acts. So in other words, he's talking to the religious person who feels superior over the irreligious person, and he's telling them, you got to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, how are you conducting yourself within the religious observance that you're already doing? Are you doing enough? Are you doing in the other areas as we get more refined? As we talked in Tanya, for example, how are you in sanctifying Hashem with that is permissible? We talked about in Tanya that not only do we have to refrain from evil, we also have to utilize that what is permissible to do it with the right focus, not to do it for selfish purposes. Eating, sleeping, exercising, those mundane activities, how are you doing in those things? And remember remember, the more you become closer to Hashem, the more your neshama advances in the fight, meaning it becomes stronger, it davens more, it does more mitzvahs, it becomes more observant, so to speak. The stronger your evil inclination will come along. Always remember that. It's a team, and it's always he's always in the same league, right? Like you have in sports, you have different leagues, right? You get to the major leagues, then you're going to compete against major teams. Your evil inclination will upgrade with your neshama. If your neshama gets more excited and becomes more advanced, your evil inclination upgrades as well. And now the challenge becomes a different challenge. There was once a story of one of the great students of the Alter Rebbe. His name was Hillel. Called Hillel Paritcher. He was from a town called Paritch, and he was a funny guy. He was it was the Hasidic comedian. There's many funny stories about him. There's actually a kid's book was made out of all his stories, so they're very humorous. So he utilized humor to bring out points. One of the stories that pop out of the mind, he would walk down the roads with a bunch of Hasidim, and he walked by the house of the Alter Rebbe, and there was a pole sticking out of the house. So he grabbed the pole, and he swung back and forth. Like in the air, he swung back and forth. They said, "What are you doing?" He said, "You walk by a shoe store. There's a big shoe hanging out, right? You walk by you walk by a baker. There's the big sign or a big loaf of bread made out of metal that's hanging out on the pole. You walk by a house of the Rebbe. What's hanging on the pole? A chassid." Once he came to a farbrengen, and they were serving a lot of good food at the farbrengen. Every farbrengen needs to have good food. Why is there good food by a farbrengen? Why do we serve a good kiddush after you daven? Because we have to feed our evil inclination. We talked about last chapter that eating is really taking care of our animal soul, right? So when we come to a farbrengen, we want to talk about a farbrengen. You want to talk about Tanya. You want to talk about uplifting, inspiration. But who comes along? The evil inclination. So we bring a lot of good food. The evil inclination is happy. If the evil inclination is happy, is distracted with the food. Now you can talk about Hashem, about all the good stuff. The whole purpose is to bring along your animal with you. It's not to indulge yourself. Even by farbrengen, you're not supposed to indulge yourself in the food. You eat the food, so I take care of my animal, so it's quiet, so I can focus on my neshama. But once it was at a farbrengen, and the waiter brought in a tray of meat. And there was a rush. Everyone jumped up and wanted to grab the meat. He never saw like such an excitement of the Hasidim that want to grab the meat. He jumped up the first, Hillel. He took the whole tray, threw it on the garbage.
Oh.
He said, and by the way, Hillel Paritcher was a very spiritual man himself. Garbage. Within a few seconds, the butcher runs into shul. Stop, don't eat that meat. The meat is treif. There was a mistake in the slaughter, and that the meat is not good. It's not kosher to eat. So they realized that Hillel saved them from eating treif. Right? You can have kosher animal if it's not slaughtered properly, it makes the whole animal not kosher. Ritual slaughtering is very, very, very detailed, and there's a lot of rules and regulations. 1 out of 10 animals still today, even after they're slaughtered, have to be sold to a non-Jew because they're not kosher. Then you have to inspect the animal inside. If the animal has different deficiencies, or there can be a little hole in the lungs and stuff like that, makes the whole animal not kosher. I'll just give you a side information. So they asked Hillel, "Are you like a prophet? How did you know? You know, if you would not have thrown the thing in the garbage, we wouldn't all eat and transgress and eat the non-kosher food. How did you know? You like a prophet?" He said, "No, not a prophet." He said, "Look, when we'll bring him, and the guy comes in with the tray of meat, and I saw the excitement of the guys are like storming onto the meat. I felt that the evil inclination sensed there's something so exciting about this meat, more than any other meat I ever seen, that I knew that there's something wrong over here."
Wow.
So when you get excited about something that
Mm,
is not for Hashem,
mm,
even if it looks kosher, ask yourself, where's the excitement coming from?
mm.
Is it coming from my soul? Or is it coming from my animal soul? I'll finish up with the story with the again about religious and non-religious. So one of my favorite anecdotes. I'm sorry if you heard it so many times. It was a Jew. And he threw in here at tzedakah, by the way. Right in the end, he wrote about tzedakah. Did you notice that?
Mm.
That even giving a tzedakah has to be a struggle. Tzedakah should be in a way that it's not for selfish purposes. Tzedakah should be in a way that's coming out of humility, and it is a sacrifice. If it's not a sacrifice, then maybe you're not doing enough. And not only monetary matters, and anything we do in helping others. So this miser, the story, the anecdote is about this miser, was a very religious Jew, but a tremendous miser. Never gave anybody a penny. One day, he gets a knock on the door, and this very poor man, starving, hasn't eaten in 3 days, knocks on his door, says, "Please, I haven't eaten any food." And the miser says, "No." Says, "Please, I'm about to die if I don't eat." So the miser goes to the garbage, his garbage can, pulls out a rotten piece of fish that he threw out and gave it to the poor man. The poor man takes it and leaves. The miser goes to the synagogue in the afternoon for the afternoon service, and the rabbi makes an announcement that they just found out that this poor man is really sick and everybody should pray, and it's a mitzvah to visit the sick. The miser says, "Okay, it doesn't cost money. I'll go visit the man." Goes visit the man. In the evening service, he comes back. The rabbi says, "The person passed away. There will be a special, they're asking everybody to come to the funeral. There's not enough family. There's a mitzvah to go to a funeral, one of the mitzvahs." So the rich man goes to the funeral. The next morning, goes to the funeral. After the funeral, they announce that there's going to be a shiva. It's a mitzvah to go to the shiva. So in the afternoon, he makes a shiva visit. Comes that evening, the miser, or a rich miser, comes home and he's beaming from face to face, beaming from side to side. His wife says, "What are you so happy about?" He says, "Don't you see how amazing? With one rotten piece of meat, of one pot rotten piece of fish, I performed so many mitzvot. Tzedakah, visiting the sick, going to a funeral, and doing a shiva visit." Very sad, but true joke. Many times, people act this way, self-righteous. In a sense, the Alter Rebbe says we all behave this way in one way or another, in a refined way, and we ought to look at ourselves. Now, when you point a finger on somebody, you ever notice when you point a finger on somebody, right? You point a finger, you're pointing 3 fingers back towards you, right? You look, when you point the finger, one finger, you got to look triple inside of yourself. All right, let's begin chapter 31. I didn't anticipate we're going to finish earlier, so let's do chapter 31. Chapter 31 in a few minutes. From depression to joy, dismantling negativity from within. In chapter 29 and 30, Tanya taught us a series of humbling meditations aimed at solving the problem of Timtum Halev, spiritual insensitivity. This chapter continues along the same theme. We also will learn how to come out of the negative state of mind and use humbling thoughts to propel us to positive and joyous state of mind. Now, even if we spend an hour or two or more delving into the above concepts in chapter 29-30 at great length, to achieve ego deflating and a broken heart. And as a result, you get really depressed. It's not a cause for concern. So as long as it passes quickly, see below section 2. Because although depression stems from Klippas Noga, not from holy energy, it can still be something positive, as we shall see. And remember, we learned in chapter 29 and 8 that those negative or those ego deflating sessions ought to be for a very short period of time. They're important for a short period of time and it's a designated time, because then there's a positive outcome. So before explaining how depression can have a positive result, Tanya first brings proof that it doesn't come from a holy energy. Since in reference to holy energy, the verse states, strength and gladness are in his place, and the divine presence will only rest when there's joy in observing a mitzvah, and the same is true with study of the law. But if a depression over spiritual things, while still derived from Klippas Noga, it comes from part of Klippas Noga. Okay, we'll stop here because I'm getting into a bigger discussion, and I'd rather give more time to it next week. But I want to just share that what he's going to start beginning to explain. Number one, and this is a good rule of thumb. In addition to what we learned today about that if there's not enough, if there's no struggle, that means you're not doing enough. The other important ingredient to everything we do in our service to Hashem is simcha, is joy. Is joy. The whole Judaism is all about joy. The whole Hasidic movement came around to teach joy in Judaism. Chabad is all about joy, teaching. If there's no joy in what you're doing, there's no joy in the mitzvah you're doing, if there's no joy in the struggle that you're experiencing, then you don't have enough energy to overcome, to move on, to fight, to grow. Joy is an integral part. Now, even if you are going to have your session, your ego deflating session, which makes you sad, there can still be joy with that. Joy, being joyful and having a sad moment can actually go together, and in a sense must go together. And I'm not talking sad over something that happened to you. Sadness in your spiritual pursuit. If there's no joy in the machine, in the recipes missing joy, you're not going to have a good cake coming out. The joy, the sadness will take you to very bad places. So if I'm excited, if I'm joyful, if I have meaning and purpose, and I have inner joy of what I'm doing, then that I am saddened over something that I need to improve. Why? Because I am here to have a life that is meaningful and joyful. And the joyful tries to take and examine a part that I am doing that might not be enough, and I need to do more. So who is in the driver's seat against the joy is the driver's seat. The sadness is just here to propel me and allow me to grow. All right, my friends, any questions before we wrap this up?
Heavy stuff.
Huh?
That's heavy stuff. I mean,
You want it easy?
it's real, yeah, that's real deep, deep. It's, wow. One has to really think and meditate on those, everything you've said, instead of jump off and do our chores. I mean, there's a lot of sinking in, I think.
That's right. That's right. That's why prayer and meditation of these concepts are so important day in, day out. I got a how do you say, a caricature painting of of Tanya. Let me see if I could find it quick. Tell me if you like it.
You did a good job. That's a difficult word. Caricature.
Caricature, no? What did I say?
Yeah.
I can't know.
That's a tongue twister. They call it a tongue twister.
Tongue twister. Let's see, here it is. Let me share screen. How do you like this?
I like it. Exactly how I feel.
What are all the different symbols there?
It's like all the social media, YouTube, your emails, the internet, Twitter, and Tanya's pumping it out of your system.
I like it.
What's underneath? They look like tags, or what are those? Is he on the sand, or what is that?
Can you send it to us?
Yes, I don't know. Maybe all his cell phones that he's doing. That
Or,
he's
yeah, it's a good thing to take a picture.
passed on. I'll post it on our chat.
Hold it.
I'll post it. You have it properly. Okay.
I like it.
All right. This could be the new marketing for Tanya.
It's interesting because I see it as going into the head, not the stomach. The stomach would be the animal soul.
It's popping out of the stomach. It's like, when they clean the stomach after you digest something bad.
Say what?
Well, again, it's how many people, that's how many opinions is gonna be.
That's
Probably true.
Okay. I wish everyone a good week. We'll continue our conversation next time around. I posted it on the chat already, so you have it.
Okay, great.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, everybody. Nice
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.